Wednesday, March 2nd. And we're going to get into more of our stories today. The one that says yesterday's chart paper is just your random piece of notebook paper we were using yesterday. So you'll just keep using that one. Turning in Camp T stuff because I get to start making groups here coming up. And again, no stuff turned in. I can't put you into a group. 9-week assessments are coming up next week. For ours, it's going to be Monday. There are 3 nonfiction articles you have to read before Monday. That's the bad news. Good news is they're short and they're actually fairly entertaining. But it's the same thing that every 7th grader is taking the same test. You have until next Monday to read them. They are already posted up on Canvas if you want. If not, wait till Friday after we take the Olympians quiz. You should have time to finish reading them then if you want to. Or read them this weekend. Just make sure you have them read before Monday. Or don't read them. Show up on Monday and then go, Mr. Brovicast, I can't do this. I haven't read them. And I'll go, yeah, sucks to be you. Good luck. And then we'll just get a chance to laugh at you. I feel the same way. Then this is the part we started getting into yesterday. We're going to get through another 4 to 5 of them. We should hopefully get through that part. We'll see. So let's rewind slightly and see what you guys have. Destiny.
Oh, it's about Greek mythology again. It's Aphrodite, the wife of
Uh-huh. We're just not to that point yet either. Nathan.
Right, so why aren't there an E in grades?
What? I have no idea. I've always wondered the same thing.
ABC.
I'm sure they have some reason, but it goes way back before me. The first god that gets a throne on Mount Olympus? Zeus. What do we say for Zeus?
King of all
Daddy
King.
You disturbing children.
Whoever said that
And
is weird.
The hand sign for him?
Point and then
There you go.
mirror.
And then throwing of the lightning bolts. Then our next one to get a throne is Hera. And then for Hera we say?
Queen of all gods.
There you go, the queen of all gods. And the hand sign that goes to there. Nicely done. Again, queen, not moose. Slight difference from
Bro,
there.
I'm trying to find my paper.
Our next one to get a throne is?
Poseidon.
God of ocean.
For Poseidon we say?
God of Ocean. I say King of Ocean.
Works for me. God of the oceans or King of the oceans. And then the hand sign for him?
It's this. You said I can do
I'm
that.
not stopping you. Our next one to get a throne is?
The meter. The Peter.
Oh, Hades.
Hephaestus.
Wait, no, one.
So,
There's no hate.
hey children at home, that unhappy sound you hear is learning going on and the glaring from multiple children at me as they're trying to kill me with their eyeballs. But it's okay. I'm strong enough that I'm not going to die on the outside, just on the inside. Back to here.
Wait.
Sorry, I'm still ignoring you. Hades. Why is Hades not considered still up there?
He doesn't
He doesn't want to be up there. He doesn't want to be up there.
Stop yelling.
So, the fact that he is the one that gives up his throne, he is the first one to give up a throne, and so he does not stay. The one that gets a throne and stays is,
Demeter.
and that's where Demeter comes in.
Do we have to play?
What do we say for Demeter?
God of
Grain and harvest.
There you go. That's where the grains and harvest god comes in, or the queen. Have we not done her? All right.
We haven't done the action.
Wait, Mr. Brovicast, do we have to put down Hades?
No, you don't put down Hades.
That's
So-
what he said to erase.
I know.
Wow.
Ooh, have you guys
Is it
considered?
still on the board? Is it?
Have you-
Is it?
Have you guys considered setting up?
Is it? Are you so?
Wait, me too?
No, you stopped. It's the whole joy of not yelling at each other. Home children, we're going to continue. We're trying to record 5th period. We'll see how long it lasts. Anyway, from there, with Demeter, the god of grains and harvest, or, did I talk about the fact that we don't use the word goddess yesterday?
No.
So, with all of them, I refer to them as gods, not goddesses. The reason being, as according to the Greeks, goddess was not a thing. They were all gods. It's much like we have a human. We don't have a human and a humaness. You're just all humans. Gods was sort of like a race of creatures. They're all gods. The word goddess does not exist until like the 1970s with hippies, when they're like, I'm a goddess of nature. So that was more where the goddesses come in. So that's why I just call all of them gods. With Demeter, her hand sign. So we used to have these things at our school called dances, which we would have them like once every couple months, and kids would stay after school, and we'd all like go down to the gyms and eat food and run around and act. It was awesome. And then COVID came and we stopped being able to do stuff like that. But someday I'm hoping they come back. Kids taught me a dance at one of these dances that I ended up stealing and using for this. And the idea is the dance is called the lawnmower. And if you're unfamiliar with the lawnmower, I will teach you how to do the lawnmower. But the idea, so home children that you can see me, lawnmower, because I figure mowing the lawn is as close to farming as many of you guys get, except for those of you who do farming and stuff like Minecraft, if you want to go for that way. So what you're going to do is you have to grab onto the handles of your mower, and then to start the mower, you have to grab the pull start, and you go pull start, pull start, pull start. On the third one it starts, and then you have to mow the lawn. And you mow the lawn. So it's going to go, Demeter, God of grains and harvest. Now, the happy expression is optional. It just brings me joy because mowing a lawn, you're killing all that grass. You're like, die, grass, die! And so it just makes me smile, but you may have your own issue. So, Demeter, gods of grains and harvest. What's up, Carrington?
So, now he's told us about the fables, right? And you said that fables get passed down and they get changed, right? I think they told you this and you changed like the moves and stuff.
No, that's that. You can Google it. That's the lawnmower move. Okay. The fact that connecting it to meter is me, but the actual move, that's the lawnmower. There's also the shopping cart, which is like this one, but you're taking stuff off a shelf and you're putting it down there. When we go to Camp Tecumseh, one of the things we do is we teach you guys how to do classic dances like that. Hi, Destiny.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
What does direct sons and daughters mean?
So Hestia, the one that's up here, sorry, I was ignoring you and just moving on, is our next one that's going to get a throne on Mount Olympus. And so as we go through and do it from there, we have, again, we've gone through Hades, Poseidon, Zeus, Hera, Demeter, and then Hestia. If you can't see her poster there, I took a picture of it and put it up here to try and make it a little bit easier for you to see. Again, I know, there's a reflection on it, there's only so much I can do. She's not a ghost, which is what she looks like here. Hestia was the god of the hearth. For those of you who celebrate Christmas, the hearth is what you put stockings on. So it's the thing above the fireplace. The fireplace, which is the thing you see down here, was super important to the Greeks because having a working fireplace in your home was what allowed you to not have children freeze to death in the winter. And you got to avoid these things called kidsicles. So Hestia was a really important god to them. So she's supposed to be smoke being formed above the fireplace, and she was watching over the house because she was sort of like the guardian. She is not one that keeps a throne. She gives up her throne for one of these gods in an upcoming story. So she has a throne for a long time in Greek mythology. She is an Olympian, but she is not one of the final Olympians. So we're going to remove her.
I'm guessing.
So she is, that you're going to lose points for talking, I would guess that too. So Hestia is up there, and I'm going to keep referring to the fact that she has a throne, and you're going to need to know her. So if you want to write off to the side, Hestia, god of fireplaces, because she is on Friday's quiz, just make sure you remember who she is. Oh, she's also one of the only nice gods. Almost every god, there's stories of them doing horrible, mean things. Hestia, there's no stories of her being mean. She was always nice. In this poster, that poster I have of her, she is the one behind Hephaestus, who's like patting him on the shoulder because she's trying to be nice.
Oh, because all the gods.
What again?
The fireplace. Safe homes. At this point, Zeus has filled in the thrones with his brothers and sisters. But we still have a whole bunch of thrones left. He wants to fill them in with people that he trusts that are related to him. But he's out of brothers and sisters. Can't use his dad because he tried to kill him. Tries to go for his mom, but his mom says, I want nothing to do with it. So if he's going to fill in the rest of the thrones, what family members will he be able to trust? Children. Problem is, he doesn't have children yet. So he begins Operation Let's Have Kids. So, before we get to Operation Let's Have Kids, we're going to practice the first 4 gods together. And then tomorrow we'll practice the next 4. So I'm going to go through and show you the god and do the hand sign. You just have to say the god and do the thing. So we'll start off with
Zeus. The king of all gods.
Hera.
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 Queen of all gods. Poseidon. King of all oceans. King of the ocean.
God of the ocean.
Demeter.
God of rain and harvest.
Works for me. All right.
Yeah, it was hard.
No, what?
So Zeus and Hera have 4 kids together. If you look on the little thing here where it has down the middle, it has their 4 kids. 2 boys, 2 girls. 2 become Olympians, 2 don't. The 2 that become Olympians are the 2 boys, because again, Zeus is sexist. Hephaestus and Ares are the 2 that become Olympians. The daughters don't become Olympians. Even worse, one of them gets a really insulting job. The other one gets nothing at all. Hebe, the next daughter, H-E-B-E, is not on the list. When she's born and becomes of age to get a throne, and she's like, Dad, do I get a throne too, like my brothers? Zeus goes, I have the next best thing to a throne. She's like, what's that? He goes, well, sometimes the gods on the thrones are going to get really thirsty and hungry. And whenever we're thirsty or hungry, we need someone to bring the food and drink to us so our tum-tums don't hurt. When that happens, we're going to clap our hands and then you bring it to us. She's like, you mean I'm a waitress? He goes, no, dear. Waitresses get paid. So all I do is when I clap my hands, you just bring it to me and then you go away at the end of it. She's like, oh, I'm a maid. And he's like, well, let's use the term handmaiden. It sounds better. And so Hebe becomes the handmaiden of them, and she just has to bring them food and drink. But that's still better than her sister Ilithyia, who gets nothing. Ilithyia is like the unknown sibling. When she's born, it's just like, it's a baby, think, and just throws it away. And so I don't really have a lot of stories with her, which, fittingly, a lot of kids connect to Ilithyia. It's like, I'm the unknown kid in my family. Ilithyia must be a middle child. And so Ilithyia is the one that no one seems to pay attention to, which makes her sad, but it's okay because no one cares about her. Poor Ilithyia. It's only true because it's fun. Hephaestus, we've talked about. What is he the god of?
He's the god of smiths.
Metalsmiths. Nicely done. So Hephaestus, god of metalsmiths, and so he's the one up here metalsmithing, and then there, then over yonder with the metalsmithing on that one. Not god of fire. I mean, he couldn't like throw fireballs because that'd be really cool. He was just the god of metalsmithing.
No, the god of
With
fire.
that, our hand sign to go along with him. Almost every picture, he's doing, much like Zeus, he's doing the exact same action in all of them. There you go. Metalsmith, you pick up your hammer and you just go, God of metalsmiths. This is also where we learn that some of you guys should never use a hammer. As I'm watching you, like, I'm the god of metalsmiths.
Like this. I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, you're going to become the god of concussions. I'm the god of concussions.
So, Brovicast, is it fine if I do this?
Keep yelling out loud. Yes, eventually you're going to lose points because you just keep yelling out loud at me. Don't you give me grumpy face. Yes, you can do your weird 2-hand dancing thing too.
He went 4 seconds without.
So, with Hephaestus, before we get to Ares, there's another thing I've told you about Hephaestus.
He's the only ugly and crippled god.
Nicely done.
He's alone.
Which brings us to our story. So with this one, this connects to how he got to become the god of metalsmiths. So here we go. This story begins when Hephaestus was a wee little child. And as he was running around on Mount Olympus as a wee little child, one day he heard his parents having an argument. Zeus and Hera yelling back and forth, and little Hephaestus came running in. Hephaestus was not loved by his parents as much because he was a little on the plain side, not fully ugly, just not nearly as attractive as his brother Ares. Ares was one of the more attractive gods. So in comparison, it made Hephaestus look worse. So parents weren't real in love with him, but at least Hera kind of liked him. He sees the parents yelling at each other, and he realizes that it's because his dad was friendly, and Hera was yelling at Zeus for his friendliness, and Hephaestus decides to team up with Hera to yell at Zeus. And it was like, Daddy, you're a bad daddy. Why would you make Mommy unhappy? Stop being friendly. Zeus does not like having his wife yell at him, and likes having his child yell at him even less. So he picks up little Hephaestus and starts shaking him. And he was like, bad child, don't you yell at your father. and then picks up Hephaestus from there, holds him above his head, and throws him as hard as he can. Now, one, you should never throw children. That's usually a bad thing.
That ruins my evening.
Two, you should not throw children when you have superhuman strength, because then all of a sudden they go supersonic, they take off flying. Three, don't throw children when you have God's strength and are on top of a mountain, because then your baby goes flying out into nothing, which is what happens to little Hephaestus. He goes flying out there, and his little arms are flapping into the air, and he's like, I made a poor choice, I made a poor choice. And he's afraid that he's going to land out in the ocean. Baby gods still had a chance of being injured and getting killed, because it turns out, as they grow, they had to drink this stuff called nectar and ambrosia, which actually was in Percy Jackson. They talk about it there too. It was sort of like God Gatorade. You drank it to make your bones big and strong. And so gods had to drink nectar and ambrosia until they got of the correct age. Then their bones were set and they were good. He was worried that he would land in the water and then drown and die. And he's like, I don't want to die. But then he sees a little island out there. And he's like, ooh, if I use my arms, I can steer myself and I can land on the island. So he does. But being a small child, not the smartest one out there, when he lands on island, he tries to land on his feet to stick the landing.
Right.
When he does, he lands all on one leg. And all of that impact shoots up the leg, shattering every bone in it. And his leg becomes like a little accordion, the musical instrument's like, and his leg just gets completely smashed. Doesn't kill him, but cripples him. Now, normally once this happens, you would drink your nectar and ambrosia, your god Gatorade, you would heal back and you'd be fine. But Zeus was in a mood, was not happy because of his wife yelling at him and his son yelling at him. So Zeus declares, Hephaestus is now no more part of our gods. No one is allowed to help him. He is now banished. If any god is caught helping Hephaestus, they also get banished too. So no one could go help Hephaestus. So he ends up growing up on this island by himself. His leg slowly heals back, but never goes back to normal. So even though he becomes sort of a grown person on the island, the one leg is still as he walks around. Gets to be late teenagers, early 20s, keeps hoping that someday someone's going to come rescue him. No one ever does. Till one day, there's this mountain that's been on the island for years, and he would always just walk around the outside of it because with his crippled leg, climbing it was too much. And then he hears thunder coming from the top of this mountain. And he knows that Zeus has finally come back to forgive him. And he decides he's going to try to get to the top of the mountain and work his little Hephaestus tushy off, apologize to his dad, and go back to Mount Olympus. So he starts climbing up the mountain as fast as he can. Until he gets all the way up to the top of the mountain and can't find Zeus. Goes all the way around it, and he keeps hearing this thunder, but can't find his dad. And then realizes the more he searches, the thunder's not coming from the top of the mountain, it's coming from inside the mountain. And he realizes Zeus was not at the top, Zeus is trapped inside. And Hephaestus realizes this is his chance to save his father. So he's going to go inside the mountain, free his father, for whatever reason he's trapped in there, and everything is going to be forgiven. So he starts finding his way through caves and all these things, and he finds the inside of this mountain, and it's a huge open cavern. In there, he sees 3 gigantic creatures, but no Zeus. These 3 giant creatures have this giant forge, and they're all busy working and banging on metal in there. And that's where the thunder's coming from. Those 3 creatures are the Cyclops. Turns out they chose the mountain he was in as one of the ones where they were working. And he hears the Cyclops working in there. The Cyclops don't have to do what Zeus says because they're older than him and more powerful than him. So even though Zeus said no god could help Hephaestus, does not apply to them. So the Cyclops see this little crippled kid come in, and they're like, "Oh, poor little crippled kid. Did your parent throw you away? We know what it's like to have a parent throw you away." So the Cyclops bring him in and start training him on what they do. They go, well, we can help you. And they start giving him nectar and ambrosia, which starts giving him strength, and he starts getting all better from there. And from that point, he starts learning what the Cyclopses are good at doing, which is
Making stuff.
making stuff. But it turns out, because he's smaller than them, he can make even better armor and weapons for the gods, because when the Cyclops did it, they were so big, they had to make things like using little tweezers to make them small enough. Hephaestus was already small, so he was able to make things the right size. Zeus notices this dramatic change in the quality, so he goes to talk to the Cyclops. He's like, hey, I've noticed that the things you guys are making are really impressive now. What changed? Like, how are you guys doing such a better job now? They're like, well, we have an apprentice who's been working with us, this little crippled kid. And he's like, I've got to meet this crippled kid. This is amazing. I'm going to bring him up to Mount Olympus. And he goes to meet the crippled kid, and he's like, oh, you're kind of an ugly crippled kid. Wait a minute. I think I know this ugly crippled kid. And Hephaestus is like, Daddy. And he was like, crippled kid. And Zeus says, you know what? I apologize for chucking you out a window. That was a bad parenting choice. Would you like to come back up to Mount Olympus and join me? And Hephaestus is reluctant, but he doesn't want to stay down there. So he goes back up to Mount Olympus, but does not forgive Zeus. And he's still mad at Zeus, and Zeus has to earn his forgiveness, which he does with the story coming up. So at this point, Hephaestus is now up on Mount Olympus, still grumpy at Zeus, but at least no longer trapped out there.
Oh, gritty
and that's how he got crippled and how he learned to be a metalsmith. The other one, his brother, is, and we've already talked about Ares. Was he the god of war?
The war.
So
And
with
he's dumb.
Ares being the god of war, he was not a good person at all. Ares was a jerk. He was good looking. He was one of the most attractive of the male gods, but he was not one that the other gods got along with because of his personality. So there are stories I've read about Ares coming down to Earth, taking a human form, going down to a bar and picking bar fights with humans, and then getting beat up by the humans because he was such a bad fighter. He would then pout, go back up to Mount Olympus, and cry to the other gods, I went down to a bar, and this one guy with tattoos, he just kept punching me in the face. And they're like, you're a god. He was like, oh, I know, but it kind of hurt. And they're like, oh my God. So because of that, we need to know he's the god of war, but also a gigantic wussy. So I'm going to teach you a thing called the wussy fighter stance.
Yeah.
Now, this goes back to my junior high days. So I know it's hard to imagine, but in my junior high days, I was a wee bit of a dorky kid. And I got picked on by bullies in junior high. So I had to learn how to defend myself. So this was how I learned how to defend myself when I was a kid. The first thing you have to do, no, that's slap fighting. So you have to realize that bullies like to go for your neck because it's the soft, swishy thing. That's why I always tell you guys to throat jab somebody because it takes them right down. So I realized that even as a child, protects your throat. So figure out which arm is your dominant punching hand because that's the one that's going to protect your throat. So whichever is your dominant one, it goes across your throat as a barrier. So when they try to throat jab you, there's something there to stop it. Then I wanted to make sure I protected my face because that's where the moneymaker is, and the brain is up there. The brain is important. And so from watching football players, I saw the football players had a mask on. So I realized I needed to create a safety mask for myself. So you then come behind your elbow and you create a face mask, and it gives yourself padding so in case you get hit. And this allows you, for whenever the bully comes at you, it allows you to swing and come at them. And so that becomes our wuss fighter stance.
I got it.
You are surprised by how effective it is when someone starts to pick on you and you're like, oh, really? Yeah, let's go. And then when you come at someone, when they fall down laughing, that buys you critical seconds to run away. Because like, oh God, what? Oh man, he's gone. Now I'll pick on someone else. And you're like, wee-hee-hee-hee-hee, and you just run away from there.
Mr. Brovicast, can we say the name? Do we have to say the names during, like, when, cause you know,
Ares, god of war. Just like
we
that.
don't say it, right?
Just like, yeah, I just do the hand sign.
Okay.
I've also discovered that in my years of teaching, that is the one thing that kids seem to remember from my class when high school kids come back and they walk into my room like, I remember this room. I'm like, do you remember anything else? And they're like, nah. And I'm like, what god was it? And they're like, Aries. And I'm like, oh, at least you learned one thing. So for some reason, this moment is going to stick with you for years. I also did it on TikTok because kids found it so entertaining.
What?
I know. So at this point, we now have the 2 sons who have thrones on Mount Olympus. Hebe, no throne, she's a girl. Alithia, no throne, she's a girl. But Zeus has now run out of children with his wife. So he decides, time to get children with people that aren't his wife.
I'm leaving.
What?
That's going to bring in Artemis and Apollo.
Artemis is the children.
So Artemis is the one here hugging the moon. Apollo's the one there shooting through the sun. They're also over here. That one.
Who was friendly
that
with
one.
his sister? I mean,
And then over here,
What is-
Artemis
his
and
kids?
Apollo.
I know a nephew.
So with these 2, Artemis and Apollo, they were considered twins because of their story I'm getting ready to give you and what they represent. And what they represent?
No, a cousin.
Sun and the moon. So by this time, most women were smart enough not to be friendly with Zeus because they realized being friendly with Zeus led to bad things happening. So this story begins with a Titan girl by the name of Leto, Leto. Zeus takes a liking to Leto, so he starts trying to hit on her and flirt with her. But Leto's not a dummy. When Zeus shows up, she throws a hand in his face. She's like, no, flirting with you is bad, so gets to stepping. And she refuses to be with him. So Zeus leaves her alone. Just kidding. It's Zeus. Instead, he decides to go full creeper mode and goes behind a nearby tree and just creepily watches her for the next several days. You know, as creepy people do. As he watches her, he realizes that she comes down to the same pond every day. And there are this group of swans that were going around this little pond area. And she would come down there and feed the swans and throw out food. And sometimes she'd be able to take like a stick and throw it, and the swans would go after the stick and stuff like that. And he was like, oh, she likes playing with the swans, does she? Yeah, done. And so he takes the form of a giant swan and goes out there to where the lake is and goes over to where the other swans are and just starts knocking them out of the way with his giant swan wings. And as soon as she's like, swans, you want some food? He's like, swan! Smack! Smack! And knocks their swans out of the way, then goes right up next to her. He's like, swan! And then she's like, you're an aggressive swan. And he's like, hmm. And so eventually chases the other swans away, so it's just him left there hanging out with her.
Oh.
She spends the next several days coming down. She's like, where's the other swans? And he's like, swan! She's like, well, at least you're here. And she'd like surf on the back of him. She's like, surf, swan. And eventually she starts to fall for this swan. And she's like, swan, you're like the best pet ever. I've never had someone I've been able to connect with. I can talk to you. It's great. You know what, swan? If you were a person, I think I'd fall in love with you. But it's too bad you're a swan.
No.
And the swan goes, huh? And turns into Zeus. She goes, what? Swanee, you were Zeus the whole time? And he's like, hey, baby. And she's like, oh, Zeus. Friendly. And they're friendly. Soon after their friendship, Hera finds out. Because that's what Hera does.
She's ugly.
And she comes down and confronts Leto. And she's like, hey, girlfriend, rumor is you done been with my man. And Leto's like, well, it's not my fault. He was a swan. And Hera's like, nope, that makes it worse, but thank you. She goes, so here's what's going to happen. Because my man, his kingdom is everything you see. As long as your feet are touching his kingdom, you can't stop running. I'm going to put a curse on you. Curse. And Leto goes, oh, well, I'm not running right now. I don't feel like running, so on your curse, I'm not going to go running. And Hera's like, okay. What if I did this? And out of the ground comes this gigantic python, a snake the size of the Empire State Building. It's like, boom, boom, hiss. And Leto's like, yeah, that would do it. And the snake's like, rah, and comes out, she's like, yay! And then she takes off running. And the snake chases her. As long as her feet keep touching the ground, the curse continues, the snake goes after her. And this continues for days. Being a Titan, she doesn't have to stop running. She can just keep going. The days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. And it turns out when she was friendly with Zeus, she got pregnant. So she continues to run as she gets pregnanter and pregnanter and pregnanter. And as she runs, her belly is like, rah, rah, and she's pushing it to one side and the other. And the running goes on for years, and then it goes on for decades, and she just gets pregnanter and pregnanter. And she starts running by Mount Olympus, and she would see Zeus up there, and she would shake her fist. She's like, I hate you, Zeus. You're responsible for this. And he'd be sitting there eating popcorn, and he was like, sucks to be you. But as the years went by, he began to feel a new emotion that he'd never felt before, called guilt. And he was like, I kind of feel like I'm a little bit responsible for some of this. So I should probably help her solve it. So he comes up with a plan. He's like, all right, since you're so sad and pouty, let me help you out. Since you're cursed as long as your feet touch my kingdom, what I'm going to have you do is leave my kingdom. There's this cliff that sits above the ocean. Go to the edge of the cliff, jump off of it, land on this island that's just off the edge of the cliff in the ocean. Once you do, this island is connected to the ground through a land stream. It was common knowledge. Islands were just floating there because of the land stream. He says, my brother's going to come, break the land stream, thus separating it, thus making it all part of his kingdom, freeing you from the curse, and then you can stop yelling at me. She was like, okay, good idea. By the way, to try and make this complete, I Googled the phrase running pregnant woman. Surprisingly enough, not a lot of pictures, but I did find one. So then I got sassy, and I decided to Google running snake. Found one of those also. So I was pretty excited on that one. So she runs to the edge of the cliff with the snake coming behind her and hissing. She jumps, lands on the island. Before the snake is able to launch itself and land on the island, Zeus's brother comes up to break it. His brother being?
No, it's Poseidon.
There you go. Poseidon comes up and breaks it, smashes the little thing. Thus, as soon as it is broken, it is no longer part of Zeus's kingdom, now part of Poseidon's kingdom, and at that point, the curse is broken. As soon as the curse is broken, she stops and she's like, and gives birth to 2 full-grown children that come flying out of her. And these children are unhappy because they've spent the last several years growing up inside of their mommy. So they decide that they're going to kill the snake. Now, the first thing they're going to do, but they're here, and the snake is there, so to kill it, they have to make their own bows and arrows. So they go over here to the tree line and start ripping down the tree limbs to make their bows and arrows. But what do they use for the string? Luckily, they were born with their own strings to use. So they each pull off their own umbilical cords and then use the best part of the story when I was reading it. I was like, no, they didn't! And they use their own umbilical cords to make bows and arrows, shoot the snake, and kill it. At this point, Hera begins to feel guilty. And Hera's like, holy cow, you went through a lot as children. And Hera's like, you know what? No child should spend their childhood inside of a parent. Because what happened to Hera when she was a kid? She was inside of Cronus. So Hera decides these 2 should become the next gods on Mount Olympus. And Zeus agrees, and Artemis and Apollo get to come up and join. With Artemis, the things that she becomes the god of, 1, she is the god of the moon. 2, the god of hunting. So she is the god of moon and hunting. She becomes the best hunter to ever exist in all of Greek mythology. It was thought that she could track anything. She is also the god of single ladies, much like Beyonce. Because of what happened to her mom, she declared that she would never date a man because she thought men were evil. Yes! So she is one that any single woman would then pray to. Hand sign that we do for her is you're going to channel your inner Katniss Everdeen from Hunger Games because hunting children is fun, and you're going to go that. And then once you pull it back, if you would like to then go single lady, I understand. And so Artemis god of grain. Oh, sorry. And then Apollo, her brother, if she's the god of the moon, he's the god of
The sun,
sun.
which he is the god of the sun.
The other thing he gets connected to is he is the most attractive god to exist in Greek mythology. He was considered the hot. Ares was one of the.
Oh.
Apollo is
Okay, well, what about
the
after that?
hottest one. So he is the god of the sun
Oh,
and hotties.
I got it.
Because you have to remember, he becomes the god of music because women dig music. He becomes the god of poetry because women like poetry. So he was the god of anything women would like good hair and stuff like that. The hand sign, well, anytime you're outside and the sun is beating down on you, or if you see that one particular hot guy, there's the same hand sign both for being outside in the sun or seeing that one hot guy. Apparently, some of you guys have seen hot men before. I understand. Never, not one. That's amazing. You gotta,
Who's seen a hot man
you
before?
gotta fan yourself because the hot guys. I've had
I've
people
seen a hot guy.
do this one before too,
Not a hot
which.
guy.
Don't give me the fan. No.
Thanks for letting us know. And you can also cover your eyes if you want to, if that helps you with the whole hot guy thing. Hi, Grant. What's up?
So, so why did Artemis and Apollo grow in the womb, but